For cozy mystery readers who also love home improvement shows, you need to add Renovated to Death by Frank Anthony Polito to your reading list. In Renovated to Death, we meet writer P.J. Penwell and his partner, actor J.P. Broadway. The couple have moved from New York City to the Detroit suburb, where they host a home improvement show called Domestic Partners. In desperate need of a house to restore for their second season, Tom Cash offers to let them use his parents' house that's been sitting empty for years. But when PJ and JP stop by to look the place over, they find Tom dead at the foot of the stairs. Was it an accident or was it murder? Renovated to Death by Frank Anthony Polito is the first book in the new A Domestic Partners in Crime mystery series, forthcoming from Kensington Books. And it's a fun, queer, cozy mystery you really don't want to miss. Welcome to The Reader's Couch, a podcast that brings you lively conversations with some of your favourite authors and bookish personalities. Over here, the couch is always booked, but I've moved some books to the side table and fluffed some cushions so I can welcome a guest or two to come lounge with us. Today on the couch, we have Alex Kiester, and she's here to talk to me about her novel, The Truth About Ben and June, a debut novel that explores the complexity of a modern-day marriage when a new mother vanishes one morning and her husband must retrace events of their recent past to bring her home. Stay tuned. A historical fiction novel to add to your reading list that's based on the little-known story of America's first nursing school is The Nurse's Secret by Amanda Skinadore. Set in 1880s New York, we meet Una, a young female grifter who's evading the police. Soon, she finds herself conning her way into Bellevue Hospital's training school for nurses. Because of her life on the streets, it has prepared her for the horrors of injury and disease found on the wards. And just as she's finding her footing, a set of murders continues to follow her as she tries to leave the gritty streets of the city behind. And soon, she'll have to choose between self-preservation and exposing her identity in order to save others. The Nurse's Secret brings to light the grisly realities of 19th century medicine, the story of Bellevue Hospital and its training school through the eyes of an intriguing and dynamic heroine. The Nurse's Secret by Amanda Skinadore is being published by Kensington Books, and it's a historical fiction novel you really don't want to miss. Hi readers, welcome again to The Reader's Couch. I'm your host, Victoria Wood, and here on the couch with me is Alex Kiester, and she's here to talk to me about her debut novel, The Truth About Ben and June. Please welcome to the couch, Alex Kiester. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Victoria. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay! I'm thrilled to have you here on the show. It was such a pleasure hearing you share about your book at the Epigraph Literary Festival, so I had to have you come on here because I really enjoyed The Truth About Ben and June, and I'm so excited to have you share with us a bit more in detail.
Oh, gosh. Well, thank you very much. That makes me feel very nice. So I'm really glad you enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm excited to chat about it with you.
So before we get into the details of the book, I want to gauge your excitement here. So your book's coming out this week. It will be available on bookstores everywhere. Readers can get their hands on a copy. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling?
I'm really feeling about 100 on a scale of 1 to 10. You have to realize, I have wanted to be a writer literally since I was 7 years old. I mean, I was the kid who walked around the block narrating fictional stories in my head. My diary was not filled with stories from my own life, but filled with stories of made-up characters. So this is truly a dream come true, and it feels very surreal and very exciting. And I'm these past few months, I've been just this whirlwind of excitement and nerves and excitement and nerves. And it just like peaks and valleys like constantly. But right now I'm very excited.
I bet. And that just sounds like such a natural reaction. I'm sure folks listening can relate. But tell us about your book, Alex. Tell us about the truth about Ben and June and what can readers expect when they pick up your book?
Yeah, so my book is about this married couple, Ben and June, if you couldn't have guessed. They are in their early 30s. They have just had their first baby together. And honestly, they're just really struggling with new parenthood. So one morning, Ben wakes up to discover that June has gone missing. And he notices that so has her suitcase. So clearly, she has left. He starts to do everything he can to figure out why she left in the first place and, of course, where she went. And as he's discovering more about his wife, he starts to realize just how little he has really been a part of their life together and just how little he understands what his wife is going through. So, I mean, if you couldn't tell, there's this thread of mystery in the book, but there's also some humor and lightness too. But really, at its heart, I like to think of my book as an exploration of a marriage and what it means to share your life with another person.
Well, I definitely felt like this was a great exploration of marriage. It gave us the highs, it gave us some lows. I'm staying in spoiler free territory, but there's also a death in the family as well. There's an unexpected pregnancy between these two. So, all these different things that are happening can definitely affect any relationship, especially a marriage. So, I thought it was a great examination of that. But before I really get into the details of this book, as best I can without spoilers, I want you to tell us a bit about June, who she is as a person before this pregnancy, even before this marriage, because I also think it's very important to kind of focus on the personhood of each individual before looking at them as a married couple and as a unit.
Yeah, I love that idea because a marriage is a union of two individuals. So I would say I tend to think that all of my characters are a myopic look at a certain part of myself. And typically, that part, when I am exploring it in a character, is emphasized and exaggerated to really explore that. So I would say the piece of June that comes out of me is she's this really ambitious woman. You know, she is a professional dancer in New York City. And I think the quote from the novel is she really wants to take over the world. I mean, she's saying that jokingly, flippantly, because she's a dancer. You know, you don't take over the world with dance. But what she means is she wants this really big life. And that's how I am too. I'm a creative, I'm an artist, and I want a really big life. And so I think that's a good starting point when we're looking at June because the unexpected pregnancy has such a wallop on her life and her marriage, largely because of the drastic shift that motherhood presents to her life from being an artist. So I think that's kind of where I'd like to get into her.
Right, right, absolutely. And then, of course, her husband, Ben,
Mhm.
tell us a bit about him, what's going on in his life before June goes missing.
Mm-hmm. So Ben, when they meet, he's very, very different from June. She's this sort of like lively, bubbly person, and he's much more pragmatic. He's very grounded. He's in law school when they meet. And in that scene that I quoted earlier, when June says she wants to take over the world, Ben says, I feel like I'm sleepwalking through my life. And not that he's not invested in his life, but he doesn't exactly know what he wants. He came to me much more slowly than June did. And what really helped nail his character down is identifying the basic fear and basic desire of Ben. And his basic desire is that he wants to be a good person and have a good impact on the world. And his basic fear is that he is not good enough. And that really helped me. So that's kind of his background. And then when June disappears, what is going on in his life is that he is being swallowed whole by his career. And so the reason he's kind of been absent from his marriage is because he's desperately trying to provide for his family, and he feels like the only way to do that is to be at work at 6 a.m. and at work until 2 a.m. So he's really feeling swallowed by work and guilty about that as well. So that's where he's at when the book starts.
Right, absolutely. These two, to be fair, they've been drifting apart for some time. There's been a bit of erratic behavior going on, and then June disappears. So this is where we're at. June disappears, leaving Ben with their newborn son. Now, Ben's reaction was quite interesting, and this is how, for me, your decision to kind of tell this story in this way, I found really interesting, but I also loved it, was we kind of saw Ben's initial anger kind of transition. So first he's really angry, where's June? What's going on? But then he also gets to a point where he feels guilty. And the reason he feels this way is because he's been reading her journal entries. So it's through June's journal, he's really kind of getting a different point of view. He's also been talking to some mums in their friend circle, and that was interesting. And also, I liked the idea of June feeling like Ben was cheating on her with his work. Let's be clear, because he's very, like you said, he feels like he's drowning. And at work, because he works at a law firm, he's going through the motions of trying to provide. June is going through her own motions. But what I loved is that he was discovering June, also realizing he doesn't really know her, but through her own words. And I think that's what I kind of like that style, that through June's writings, but through Ben's reflections, we kind of get this full picture on their actual marriage. So I'm very curious about the idea of going this route of him reading June's journal entries, but also seeing him reflect on that as well, and going through things in his mind as well.
Yeah, I guess I would jump into that talking about why that format for the letters, I think, worked, or not just worked, but frankly, it felt like the only way to do it for me. And that's because throughout the book, June has these two very disparate lives that she's living out. And one life is the life and the mask that she's presenting to the world, that is telling the world, I'm okay. I'm a new mom, but I love it and I'm doing okay. And her secret life, her hidden life, is that she's not okay. She's really, really struggling with grief over her mom, grief over the life that she lost. And so I think she had to write those letters she's writing the letters, I don't know if we've said this yet, but to her mom who is dead. So she's not sending the letters to anybody. It's a journal. The reason that had to be was because a dead person is the only person who can't judge her. And she feels like she should be judged for everything that she's feeling. So the letters secret letters to her deceased mother was really the only way that I could have June feel free enough and liberated enough to be honest. It's in the title, Honest, the Truth About Ben and June. Honesty plays a pivotal role in this. And so Ben reading her journals, that's the only time he's getting an honest portrayal of what's actually going on with her. Throughout their marriage, they both are telling each other these like half truths. They're kind of saying, oh, I'm struggling with this, but like, it's okay. It's not that bad. And they're kind of trying to protect each other. They're trying to protect themselves. So Ben reading these letters, he's like, yeah, you're right. Like at first he initially blames her. And then once he's really understanding what's been going on with her, I think of this as Ben's like coming of consciousness moment, is he's realizing he had a much larger role to play in her disappearance than he ever knew. And I'm sure that we'll get into like Medea in a little bit, but that's where like that. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Because my next point is Medea, because a key theme in this novel is the Greek tragedy of Medea. So tell us about the tragedy, of course, for our listeners who are not quite aware. I mean, for me, the biggest themes from that is desire, it's revenge, it's just a lot going on. But I want you to, one, tell us about the Greek tragedy of Medea, but also tell us how this influenced your writing and where there's some kind of parallels.
Yeah. Medea is, so the way that the book touches upon it or gets into it is Medea is the role that June gives up to have her baby. So as I said, she's this dancer, and she is literally the day she finds out she's pregnant, she's also offered the role of Medea in this famous ballet. So she comes to think of Medea as like this alternate reality and sort of like what could have been. So Medea, for those of you who don't know, it's this Greek tragedy written by Euripides, and it's about this Greek sorceress, Medea. She is very powerful, and she falls in love with this mortal man named Jason. So they're initially very happy. They get married. They have 2 kids. They move to the island of Corinth. And a few years on into their marriage, Jason wakes up one morning and decides that he wants to be king. And to do this, the only way to do that is, in his mind, is to leave Medea and their children and woo the princess of Corinth and essentially marry her and then be king. Now, the most infuriating part of this whole thing is that Jason is basically just gaslighting Medea the whole time. He actually has the gall to tell Medea that he is leaving her, for the princess, for Medea's own sake, so that their children can have the wealth and status of royalty. If you can't tell by my tone, it's just like a crazy thing. So anyway, you mentioned June. The parallel is that June feels like Ben is leaving her not for another woman, but Ben's mistress is really his career and his work. And I think that the social commentary part about that is that in society, we tend to commend workaholics, especially men who work really hard. And we have this problematic gender paradigm that says the man's role is to provide and the woman's role is to nurture. And so this is the kind of parallel that runs throughout that June is seeing in her own marriage as she is doing research on the story of Medea. So that's kind of the parallel that exists there.
So I'm really curious, what was your inspiration for The Truth About Ben and June? You know, give us some behind the scenes details on your thought process, or just a spark that gave you the idea to write this story, tell this story, and just kind of put pen to paper on this one.
So I tend to think that my most organic writing happens when I am exploring my fears. And the biggest fear I had when I started this novel 5 years ago was the ambivalence of entering into parenthood, which is different from, of course, from parenthood itself. The not knowing if I want to be a mom, that really terrified me at the time. It actually still terrifies me, to be honest. But I feel like most of my friends and most women that I meet, to me at least, they seem to know with such certainty whether or not they want to be a mom. And I feel like when I compare that to my own ambivalence about it, it feels like something is maybe wrong with me, or I'm not a proper woman because I don't know. And it's a scary thought. And so the book started really as one scene between 2 characters who, of course, later became Ben and June, but at the time they were just the 2 sides of my brain. And so the scene that I'm talking about, it made it into the final draft, is the scene where Ben and June have just found out that June is pregnant, and they're basically deciding whether or not to have this kid. And June is of the opinion that she's scared. You know, she thinks she doesn't know what it's going to do to her career as a dancer. She's scared, as I think a lot of people are, about climate change and what that's going to mean for the next generation. And of course, there's other just philosophical things she's thinking about too, the inherent pain of being alive and bringing a child into a world where there's no guarantee of happiness. And then Ben on the other side is, well, there's a lot of complicated layers going into Ben's opinion, which is explored through the book. But, the thing that's shining through is that he feels like bringing a human into the world, bringing their kid into the world is a vote for humanity and hope and the future. And so that was really the two sides of my brain having this discussion. And then it turned into that scene. And then I decided, okay, they're going to have this baby. Let's see where that takes them. And then basically everything just snowballed from there.
Right. Okay. So now I'm going to put you on the spot. Who was your favorite character in the novel? Or maybe who was your favorite character to write or discover as you go along? I mean, I know Ben and June are the title characters and they're at the center of the novel. But if there's anyone else, I mean, feel free to let us know.
Yeah, so I mean, it's hard not to say June. She's my girl, like I really empathize with everything she's going through. She was sort of the emotional window sort of into this book. So it's hard not to say her. But actually, when you asked me that question, another very, very tertiary character came in. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's the character of Brandy. And she's at the end of the book. So I don't want to talk too much about her, but she, to me, was a breath of fresh air. She is this small town Texas girl who has a sort of obsession with the Russian Revolution. And I just loved writing her. She cracked me up. I just loved her.
Oh, awesome. Love it. Okay, let's get into your writing life real quick. How long did it take for you to write The Truth About Ben and June, like start to finish?
Yeah, so I did start it 5 years ago, but in that time, I did a lot. Like I met my agent and then we actually published a full length Audible original. So that I had to take off probably 2 years for that. And then I jumped back into the book. So I would probably say all told, I would say maybe it was like 2 years. 2 years start to finish.
2 years?
It took the span of 5 years.
Right. Okay. What would you say is the most difficult part of your creative process?
What's the hardest part for me is solving problems and like plot problems that you're just like, okay, this is not working. You know why, but you don't know how to fix it. Like for this book, actually, this book originally was a completely different book. The journal entries were going to a real life character who was not her mom, June's mom. And my agent and I were basically like, okay, it wasn't working because you never got to know that other character. And for me, that was the hardest part, is pivoting from my initial kind of what the plot was going to look like and pivoting to something completely different that was ultimately going to serve the story better. So I guess that would be it. I guess it would be like solving those like hard plot problems is the hardest part for me.
Okay, that's fair. But looking back, I mean, now you have The Truth About Ben and June. This is a big accomplishment. If you could tell your younger writing self anything, looking back now, what would you tell her?
Oh, I love this question. I guess I would just tell her to keep going. Like it'll all pay off. I'm sure there are probably people listening who are working right now and maybe they're not seeing like the fruits of their labor. But I do believe that if you just keep putting in the time and the effort and really emphasizing your process and not the outcome, I have seen it in my own career. I think it will pay off. And, it might not be overnight. For me, The Truth About Ben and June is the 4th manuscript that I wrote. And I learned so much writing those other manuscripts. So yeah, I think I would just say, keep going. It will pay off at some point.
At some point. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So before we jump out of your writing life, I mean, are you working on any other books? Are you working on a manuscript now? Maybe revising a new one, starting something new? I mean, what are you working on? What can you tell us?
Oh, Victoria, I wish I had a better answer for this. I really do. I am knee deep in what the heck am I going to write next? Angst. I guess the truth is I'm just in that brainstorming world of every day I think about, okay, what if I do this? What if I do this? And unfortunately, I still am feeling like every time I come up with a plot idea, I'm like, oh, that's actually the plot of the book I just read. Or that's a plot that is garbage. So I'm not in the middle of anything right now. I'm in that brainstorming process that is both fun and frustrating. And I'm trying to remember that it is supposed to be fun and I can come up with anything. But I don't know if you ever feel like this when you go grocery shopping and there's like you're trying to pick out peanut butter and there are 100 different brands of peanut butter and you can choose any of them and you don't know what to choose. That's kind of where I'm at with my book. It's like I can write anything I want to and I don't know which book I want to write. So that's where I'm at.
That's fair. And you know what? I appreciate that because that's a very honest answer. But yeah, I totally get it. But onto something that all of us enjoy doing, and that's reading. And I really want to get into your reading life. I know we're here to talk about the truth about Ben and June, but I want to know what you're reading. So tell us about the last book or books that you finished reading that you'd now recommend.
Yeah, no, oh my gosh, I can talk about books all day, every day. So for the truth about Ben and June, my two greatest sort of touchstone inspiration novels were Dear Fang with Love by Ruthie Thorpe. I love that book so much. So there's that one, and then The Painted Veil by, I always butcher his name, but Somerset Maugham. I don't know. Do you know how to pronounce that?
No, I don't know that one.
Okay. I'm not going to feel like I'm butchering it. But so those were big inspirations for my book. So I read those years ago, but they've really stuck with me. Things I've read recently that I really, really have enjoyed. This is actually a little bit older of a book. It's about 10 years old, but I just read it. Rules of Civility by Amor Tolls.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I could also be butchering his name. I'm not sure. He just came out, like his recent books are The Lincoln Highway and Gentleman in Moscow, which I actually haven't read either of those, so I definitely need to. But Rules of Civility is just this beautiful, if you haven't read it, it's a beautiful historical fiction. It's just so witty and like sharp. It's set in the 1930s. I don't know. It's fantastic. And then let's see, what else did I just read? Oh, I finally discovered Kazuo Ishiguro, who I know I'm also late onto that bandwagon. I know he's very, very famous, but I just read Never Let Me Go, which it's amazing. It's just so tragic and well written. I mean, that one really gave me the feels of like I cannot go to bed because I have to figure out what's happening in this book.
I think those are the best ones, the ones that keep you going and you can't stop turning the pages.
Yeah.
But with that said, what are some of the books you're looking forward to reading in the year ahead?
Ooh, good question. Oh, I feel like I need my like Goodreads account up here because it's hard to keep track. My TBR list is just like it's a disaster. I'm looking forward to Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I know it's been out for a few months, but I haven't read it yet. Also, a book that just came out very, very recently was The Treasures of the Sky by Jenny Zhang. And she is actually, I'm in Austin. She's a local Austin author. I actually just read that one and it was wonderful. I can't think of any more that are about to come out. I like need my Goodreads account to be able to answer this question better.
All we know is the reading list is way too long.
Yeah.
But there's some excellent books to look forward to ahead. So that's always fabulous.
Yeah.
But in addition to authors and books, we also love our local indie bookstores. So share with our listeners your favorite bookstore.
My favorite bookstore is Book People in Austin, Texas. It is just like an independent bookstore at its best. It has an amazing, what's it called, display where, like, for Valentine's Day, they'll do romances, and Mother's Day, they'll do books about motherhood. Those are just like the best indie. You walk in there and you feel so good. And that's actually where I'm having my book launch event. It's sort of like a dream come true to have my book event there. And so if anybody's in Austin, Texas, I would highly recommend Book People. It's at the heart of Austin on 5th and Lamar. So I definitely recommend that.
Yay! Amazing. So kind of bringing things back to the truth about Ben and June, kind of wrapping things together. I mean, I know you've done your job. You've given us the book. Now it's up to us readers to read it and form our own opinions, which My opinion is I think this is a great novel. It's a great exploration of marriage, just who we are before and who we are during the marriage, what we do to protect the ones we love as well. And just, I like what you said about it really being about honesty, because it really is. So it definitely hit all those notes for me. But in your ideal world, what thoughts are you hoping readers might have? What are you hoping they might feel? Just reactions, thoughts. What are you hoping for?
Oh, well, I thank you so much for your lovely take on the book, because I love that. I do want people to take away this exploration of a marriage, and I want the book to be hopeful at the end. I would also like to add that on top of it being an exploration about a marriage, and I love that take on it, I also really want readers, or how I intended it to be read there's an acknowledgement section at the end. And at one point I say, I want this to be a love letter to all the women who've suffered from a postpartum disorder. June is suffering from postpartum anxiety. And that was a big part of my research. I sat down with a lot of women who have suffered from postpartum anxiety and or depression. And it was a really incredibly emotional research process. And as I was writing the book, I just felt so much for these women. And I really just wanted it to be a love letter to them, saying like, we see you, we know you're out there, you're not alone, and there is help out there. So that's another thing I want people to leave the book with.
Right, absolutely. Well, you guys, I think The Truth About Ben and June is extremely thought-provoking. It's heartfelt. It had me guessing at some bits because, there's a bit of a mystery to it as well. But yeah, I love the message at the end for sure. And I really hope readers will give this one a go. The Truth About Ben and June by Alex Kiester. Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show and speaking with me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in to The Reader's Couch. You can find out more about the show and submit your questions for our guest by visiting our website, thereaderscouch.com. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Couch Is Booked. If you like the show, please subscribe, share, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Next week, I'll be back with new guests, more books, and some fun games we can play. But until then, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks for listening, and happy reading.